Hi, everybody, and welcome back to On the DL. I am Dana Levinson, and I'm joined today with Jared Armstrong. Jared is a 27-year-old Jewish African-American professional basketball player living in Israel. He has dedicated his life through his work to build a strong alliance between African Americans and Jewish communities. He is determined to build a greater partnership between two traditionally marginalized groups so they can support each other in their struggles for justice and equality. And I couldn't think of a better person to talk about this topic than you, Jared. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Danny. It's a pleasure,
So
for sure.
you're in Israel right now.
Yeah. I got back about I would say 3 weeks ago. It was I wouldn't say really a hard decision, but hard decision to convince my parents. If you have kids, it's not easy to tell your parents, hey, I want to go back to a war zone, but I felt
Mhm.
connected to the country. And, my dad is also a war vet. He was actually in 9/11. So, he's very compassionate. He's like, man, it's your decision, what you feel, you want to do with your career, it's up to you, just be careful, So I made the decision kind of in the matter of 48 hours to come back. And, I've just been here ever since.
I'm going to ask you about your dad in 9/11. We're going to get into that for sure.
Sure.
But I want to ask you, how long have you been living in Israel for, and why did you choose to move there?
So I've been here for approximately 3 years. My first year was a little bit rocky. I fought for Israeli citizenship. Out of college, I had an opportunity to play professional basketball here in Israel for a team called Pol Haifa in the Winners League. And after my birthright trip, and long story short, I had issues. Then my second year after I was finally granted citizenship, I went to Maccabi Rishon LeZion, which is one of the most prestigious clubs here in Israel. And then this year, I'm with Uslar Ashkelon, which is in the south, not too far actually from Gaza.
Right. So you've been there for 3 years. You are Jewish by
Yeah,
birth, and you are African American.
yeah,
Now, when you say that to somebody in North America, they kind of seem a little puzzled. They kind of tilt their
for
head
sure.
and think, well, oh, he must have converted, or his parents converted, or he's not actually Jewish. But then you get to Israel, and no one in their right mind would ever ask you something like that, because
Yeah,
unbeknownst to the most of the planet right now, Israel is probably the least racist country in the world. It is the most inclusive country I've ever been. And it's mind-boggling that people question your religion because of the color of your skin.
for sure. No, I think people don't understand how diverse the Jewish community is. I mean, they say 50% of the Jewish population in Israel, the Israeli population is Jews of color, coming from Moroccan, Iranian, Persian, Sephardic, whatever you name it, So I think people that, North American Jews that never been to Israel, they really don't understand that concept. And, the other communities that live in America that never been to Israel, they only see Jews as European because that's what they see in America. That's their perception. For some people, perception is reality, and if that's all you know, then that's all you're going to believe. So,
And it's even more so than the Jewish community. I have to say, being a part of the Jewish community, I've known my whole life that Jews come from every walk of life and look
sure.
like they don't look white and blonde like I do. That we are just a small percentage of that European descent. So I've known that my whole life, but friends of mine who perhaps that are not Jewish did not know that. And I also feel that part of what's happening in the world right now in terms of this grand revolt against the Jewish community internationally has brought attention to what and who Jews are. And that people, I mean, we know that people just don't understand who lives in Israel, who, what makes the Jewish community, what makes up this robust Jewish community in Israel. We've seen this insane amount of anti-Semitism around the world. And part of that anti-Semitism is being backed by the Black communities in Europe, in the United States, and in Canada. Now, that's got to that has to make you feel something. And I can't imagine that makes you feel good.
I mean, it saddens me, for a
Mhm.
lot of particular reasons. I mean, for me, it's pretty a complex situation because I come from an experience of being both African American and Jewish, so I have the intersectionality of both communities, so I think number one, I tell people all the time, I just actually made a post about it. Like, if you've never been to Israel, come, you can't
Mm.
speak on something that you really haven't experienced yourself, and I think a lot of people, like I said, number one, I just did TikTok about these 18 to 24-year-olds that
I
believe
saw,
that Hamas should take over Israel. That Israel should be dismantled. Like, did you
I
not
saw
see what
that.
happened on October 7th? How could you even justify the atrocities of innocent civilians? So I mean, with everything going on in America, I think there's an issue of oppress and oppressor, and there's this mentality between the Black community that Israel is the one oppressing the Palestinians, and it's very sad to see that they don't understand everything that goes on. They don't understand the security measures, and they're just uneducated.
So
I'm a
you
person
think
that,
that there's a link between that? You think that it's part of the oppressed versus the oppressor, and
for
that the
sure,
Black community is feeling that they're connecting
there's
more with the Palestinians?
for sure. They feel like they connect more to the Palestinians, and that they have more of I wouldn't say a bond, but they relate to them, with slavery and the history of the Black community. They feel like that's what's happening to the Palestinians. That Israel controls Gaza, that Israel controls the land, and that Palestinians don't have equal rights, and so they relate to that and feel to that, and that's why I feel like a lot of Black Americans sympathize with that. I mean, I spoke at a rally, and you'd be surprised how many Black Americans were there just in support of Palestine. Just for the fact that they feel that they're oppressed, and for me, it was just very sickening because, like, I probably was one of the only people there that been to Israel, that live in Israel, that live in the land, that experience different people and different cultures every day. So it's like they really don't understand it. And for the fact of the matter is, that's why I try to bring, the nonprofit initiative of bringing everybody together so they can understand one another. If you're just going to have this divide, then we're never going to come to peace.
Did you just say it's sickening to you? Is that the word you use,
Yes,
sickening? Hmm.
yes. I
Well, it's
mean,
sickening. It's sickening because it's not true. So
for sure,
there's no, it's not, they're on the wrong side of
for
the
sure.
truth,
I
right?
totally agree. I totally agree.
But I imagine it pains you. It pains you.
Yeah, because it makes me it makes them try to put this propaganda on me as I'm picking a side, that I'm, if you feel like you stand with Israel, that you can't have solidarity towards the Palestinian people, and they make me try to feel like I'm this person that's a white colonizer or I picked a side, At the end of the day, I look at what's wrong and what's right. What they did on October 7th was barbaric. It was absolutely wrong. That doesn't, there's no justification for it. And, I stand with that, and I think, Black Americans, if they can't see that for themselves, then they have to look themselves in the mirror.
What um what has been your experience when you tell people you're Jewish?
Depends on the location. So if I'm in America, uh, some may frown, some may say how, some may say, where in your family did it start, in Israel, not so much. I'll get more jokes from my teammates like, do you really celebrate Yom Kippur? Like, they kind of think, I think they're 50-50, but most of the questioning comes from the American Jewish side. So for me, I'm pretty much used to it, unfortunately, but I just humbly say, it started from my mother's side of family. But outside of that, I just feel like you should never ask somebody how they're Jewish. Like, it's irrelevant to the conversation anyway.
I I've said this several times here on this show that it's a microaggression. It's racist to say,
For
are
sure.
you are you a real Jew? Is your mother Jewish, or is your father Jewish? Who isn't Jewish in your family? Or why do you look like that? It's like, what do you mean? How do I look? Like it has been something that has driven me crazy my whole life.
For sure.
And really, the one place in the entire world where I didn't get any of that was my time in Israel. No one
Yeah,
would ever ask me what religion I am, or would assume that I'm not Jewish because I have blonde hair and green eyes.
for
It
sure.
just, because I fit in there. Everybody looks the way they look, you
Mhm.
know? I want to talk about October 7th, of course. I'd be remiss not to talk to you about your experience there, but you talked about Israel as a colonizer. I mean, that word, I mean, most people probably have never used the word colonizer or apartheid or any of these words prior to October 7th.
For sure.
And most people who are using it don't understand. I said for Christmas, I'm going to be sending dictionaries to several of people that I've worked with over the last 20 years, that they should really look up these words because they've used them so incorrectly.
For sure.
I'm sure if they'll know who they are if they're listening to this. Okay, I want to read you this quote. You know who Noah Tishby is?
Of course. Yep.
Yes, of course. So I'm just telling our listeners, our viewers, that Noah is an incredible Jewish activist from Israel. She lives in the United States most of the time. She's an actress and author, but really her activism is what has been shining for the last couple of months. And I was listening to her speak last night, and I'm going to quote her here, but I might get some of the quote mixed up, but I just wanted, this came from her, not me. So that's why I'm giving her the credit on this. So she said that calling Israel a colonial state is a lie driven by anti-Semitism. And that when anti-Semites tell you that the Jewish state is racist, colonialist, and white supremacist, it is simply not true. Never mind, Israel is not a colonial state. It is a refugee state that quite literally was decolonized from Britain. And never mind, the majority of Jews are people of color. When you hear that, what do you feel?
Great quote. I mean, I think it's true. I think everything she said is hits right on the nose. And if you come to Israel, you definitely see how diverse it is. I mean, if it
Mhm.
was a white colonizer state or country, why isn't everybody white? It's kind of answers its own question to me.
What was it like for you, your calling? You said you went on Birthright, which we can tell everybody is a pretty much a free trip for Jewish youth to travel to Israel, to experience Israel. And you went on Birthright, you went on the trip, and you said after Birthright, you said you wanted to spend time there and move there. But what was it about it that, what was the calling?
So the calling really came from my rabbi. First, he was like, "Man, you say you want to go to Israel. Like, have you ever been there?" And I never had been. And he was just like, I think you should go on the trip. It's free. Sign up. I'll, help you get on the trip. So I went, and it was 10 days, and it was really a life changing experience.
Mhm.
For myself. Just being out the country, my first time really out the country. By myself, being able to experience the land. I'm personally not spiritual, but being with other individuals my age, from all different cultural and religious backgrounds. When I mean religious, some being, religious, some being spiritual, some being, just regular casual Jews. So for me, it was a life changing experience, and it made me really want to stay. And that from that point on, if I didn't want to stay, I would never fought for Israeli citizenship. And I think a lot of people don't, understand that. Like if I was just, I was from that experience, it pretty much just wanted me to stay in Israel and experience the land and, hopefully one day be able to live here or have a family and, go from there. Let's see what life happens.
It's nice. It's a nice place.
Yeah.
We know it's a beautiful country. Um, Tell me why, or tell me what you feel right now could potentially start to rebuild the trust between the two communities, not in Israel, but perhaps around the world. I mean, sorry, I'm going to cut you
Between
off
the
before
black.
you even say, yeah, but between the Black and Jewish community, because I was just saying this to our producer. The Jewish community is nothing. I mean, I don't want to speak for the entire Jewish community, but, and you can as well, but Jewish community is nothing with the Black communities. People who are part of the Black community are our friends. They've always been our friends. So that's what I'm saying, this new revolt that has involved the Black community, it's very disconcerting, and it's very painful for a lot of Jewish people who do have Black friends like myself. Do you think that it is also the Kanye Wests of the world who make such an ass of themselves when they preach so much hate and anti-Semitism, but yet with hundreds of millions of followers, it works somehow?
For my opinion, I think what Kanye has done has definitely, hurt the relationship for sure. With
Mm-hmm.
who he was, I mean, well, who he is, his influence, and like you said, his following, that he definitely has. But to answer your question, I think a midst of it is kind of too early to say how we can kind of fix it. I think it would have to wait really till the war is over. But my first thing is really dialogue. Like, can two communities come together, sit down, and have conversation? Can the community leaders sit down and have a conversation? I think many people fail to realize how simple that is and how important that
Mm-hmm.
is. For
Mm-hmm.
me, my target is the future, and I'm not sure if you have kids, but the future is our youth. Like I made the post, 18 to 24-year-olds, you saw what they said, and how uneducated and how much propaganda and how much TikTok, they're looking at or reading. So for me, like, I just try to use sports as a way to bring kids together, not only to teach them the importance of it, but, through sports, kids, you can't win, if you can't communicate, you can't understand each other. My luxury of being a professional basketball player, I get the chance to play with people from all over the world. I can't go into a game and say, hey, I'm not passing to that kid because he's Muslim, or I'm not passing to that kid because he's Jewish. Like, I'm not going to
I know.
play, because at the end of the day, we all have to come to a common goal to win. And I think people fail to realize it's the same in society. We all have to work together, to have a common goal, to live in peace. So for me, the way I use
Amen.
my the way I use my platform and me is really to target the next generation, because 20 years, I'm not going to be relevant, anymore. The next thing is the future, and I want my kids and your kids and other Jewish, African American, Muslim, Christian kids to be able to live together, not fighting against each other, but being able to say, hey, I went to camp with the Muslim kid and we understand each other. He understands why I wear my yarmulke or I keep Shabbat. I understand why he keeps Ramadan. And I just believe dialogue and communication can do that.
I want to talk to you about your camp, of course, but there's so many things I want to talk to you about, Charity.
Yeah, yeah.
Al Sharpton, Reverend Sharpton, a few weeks ago, maybe it was 2 weeks ago. Time is escaping me now because it feels like every day
Yeah.
feels like a blur since October 7th. But he did come out with great support
Sure.
of the Jewish community. And I applaud him because he was speaking the truth. He's talking about terror. He's talking about anti-Semitism. He's talking about death, destruction, hatred. And he spoke the truth. And, I've always said the truth will set you free.
Sure.
And if we continue to speak the truth, people hopefully will listen eventually. Some that are just not rational won't. The TikTokers of this world won't. And we know that, which is very unfortunate. But maybe it takes the Al Sharptons and many more of Reverend Sharptons to come out and start talking. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the leaders of both communities, they're more speaking and talking, especially in the Black community. The more leaders that speak and talk, the better. A lot of the leaders we haven't, at least from my knowledge, we haven't really heard from. And I think that's important.
Like who, for example?
Um, I don't want to quote anybody because I haven't
No, of
done
course.
enough research, but I haven't really heard of many Black leaders that have really spoken out in support of the state of Israel, and or have countered terrorism. A lot of the things that I read are people that are against, Israel, and it's
I
rarely
agree.
unfortunate.
I agree. Where are the Obamas?
Yeah, and it's very unfortunate. I don't count terrorism. I could have lost my dad to terrorism, so this sits very, close to my heart. And I just think, the more people that stand in solidarity, the better.
Tell me about your dad. Tell me about 9/11.
So my dad was actually in the Pentagon when it got hit. Um, he worked in the Navy for 23 years, and I was only 5 years old when it happened. I actually just spoke to him about it before I left, and it hit on the opposite side of the building. But he
Wow.
has a lot of PTSD from it, but he had to clean
Mhm.
up the bodies. He had to help clean up the bodies, and he tells me he's like I actually drove me and my older sister there the next day around the building, just to show us, what happened. I was living in Severn, Maryland at the time. My first 12 years of my life, I lived there, and he worked at the Pentagon. So, it was a life changing experience for him. For me, I could have easily lost my dad that day, and
Mhm.
be fatherless. So, when what happened on October 7th, with number one, me being here, but number two, what happened with him and his experience, this is close to my heart. Like today, I went to go visit soldiers, at Sheva Hospital, to talk to them about their experience. And, I'm all about showing love and support, to people that are fighting for the country.
So I guess it's fair to say you've grown up with this, I guess, cloud of terrorism. You knew at a young age what terrorism
Sure.
was and how it can affect your family so deeply. And it's somewhat of a miracle that your father survived that.
For
Thank
sure.
God. And then you're in Israel on October 7th comes, and you are not only are you in Israel, but you are in Ashkelon, which is one of the cities. You can tell everyone's one of the cities that had bomb after bomb after bomb um, coming at the city and other forms of insane amount of terror. So, what happens to you on October 7th that you wake up in Ashkelon and the sirens are going off, and you've grown up knowing about terrorism so intimately and deeply, and this is happening to you? So, what happened?
First of all, I think it's an experience that many won't understand until you're in a person's shoes, and I think that's why it's so easy for me to speak out about it. I mean, I remember the day vividly because we had a game before that day, and I get a call early in the morning. Saturdays are our day off. I'm like, why is my coach calling me 6:30 in the morning? Like, I'm just like, why is he calling me? Like, we can't be talking about basketball right now. So I answer the phone, and he's like, listen, Jared, it's going to be rockets and missiles that come into Israel. Like, just stay in your room. My room in my apartment is the safe room. It's like, just close your door, whatever you need, take it back to your room. And nobody knew it was a surprise attack. So around 7:30, I start, scrolling on Instagram, and they were attacking cities. And I was starting to hear the missiles and rockets. And about 8 o'clock, I would say, somewhere in that hour, we got our first boom where I was at. And my apartment was shaking, and then they were constantly coming. And then one was like really strong. It was a strong boom. So I look out my window. I'm like, that seems close. And across the street is a store. The rocket had landed literally right next to the store. So I'm sitting here. I'm like, what am I going
Wow.
to do? I'm like, what am I going to do? I wait 2 hours. So I run down to we all live in a marina, which is right on the beach. And I go to my teammate's room, and he's asleep. Literally, he's asleep. So I
He
knock on the
slept
door
through
super
this.
hard. He slept through it. So I knock on the door. Long story short, me and him are both debating. I'm like, listen, what are we going to do? I said, I'm not going to stay here. I had a friend call me because his girlfriend was Israeli, and she was reading Israeli news to him. He's like, listen, come north, come north. But we wasn't sure where they were at because terrorists were on the ground. They had guns. So I tell him, I said, listen, man, we don't have no guns. They come to Ashkelon, we're pretty much dead. At least if we try to escape, if they killed us, we at least try to go to safety. So we both decided to get on the highway. We get on the highway. There were about 5, 6 checkpoints. And by that time, we had to go to Tel Aviv because my friend didn't have any food. So he was like, hey, go to Tel Aviv. At least we can have food for a couple of days. We can't leave the house. We don't know what's going to happen. So we go to a store. It was popular in Israel called Tiv Tam. And we get whatever we can get, chicken. And she knew we were basketball players, so it was a funny engagement. She's like, you want chicken, pargit? And she's very, enthusiastic, and the store is crowded. So we finally get the stuff. We get pulled over by a police officer, and he's like, hey, what are you doing out? Like, you see what's going on. What are you doing outside? So we say, hey, we're coming from Ashkelon. We're going to Ramat HaSharon. There were rockets and missiles. And he literally tells you, like, listen, go to Ramat HaSharon and don't come out your house for a few days. So we drive there, and we literally just stay there for the next 6 days till we figure out what was going on. But my friend's girlfriend at the time, she was Israeli, and it was really a tough time for her, because a lot of these individuals, Israelis, they know people in the army, they know people that were dying.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine, very close friend of mine, his daughter lived in Sarut, so like her village was being attacked, her city was being attacked. So for me, it was number one, a life changing experience. But number two, it kind of just gave me kind of fuel in my heart to speak out about it, to really like tell the world what was going on. I never knew that I would kind of use my platform to do it. But since October 7th, it just pretty much inspired me to, show what terrorism really is, what really happened to the Israeli people, because there's people that don't believe that October 7th happened.
I know that it's
So
mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling,
um,
especially when there's GoPro video of it from the terrorists themselves. So
for sure.
that's
So it was a it was
mind-boggling.
a it was a life-changing experience, and I'll never forget that day, and it goes down to history. It's something that I can tell my kids about.
When you left Ashkelon, you said you were stopped by the police. What time was that at?
It was around, I would say we left around 11:30, so about 12:30. We got stopped by the police before we got to the
Yeah.
Mahashrom. Yeah.
I mean, it's not that they're not that far apart. I mean, Israel's not a very big country. So
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
you're
for
going,
sure.
we're telling people you're going from one city to another
Yeah,
city, but it's
it's
not that far.
it's about an hour, 10 minutes
Hmm.
drive. I mean, there was a lot of checkpoints on the way. We probably went through about 4 or 5 checkpoints. And then finally, when we got there, there were, police was everywhere on the city at this point.
So you didn't see
And
any terrorists on your way
God
that
willing,
you know
no,
of, that you know.
that I know of, no.
Do you think about if you would have stayed in Ashkelon, what would have happened to you?
I didn't. I had some teammates that did. I just felt like I couldn't function. It was over 200 bombs that came into Ashkelon. So I knew I would probably go crazy just sitting in a house by myself. I don't have, much family here at all. So I would have just
Hmm.
been in my room. I knew I would have been more comfortable and, of course, more safer north. That's what they were telling us. The more north you go, the more safer you were going to be at the time. So,
And doesn't that seem so counterintuitive to Israelis and their mentality? It's always been go
for sure,
south, south, the Negev, the desert, go south.
for
South is
sure.
always safer than being closer to the center, which is Tel Aviv or beach areas. And um, it just seems so chaotic. The day, all of it just sounds so chaotic and insane and so devastating.
Yeah, I was supposed to go to the Mars concert that night.
Bruno
That's how
Mars was a Bruno Mars was in Israel, supposed to be in Israel that night.
he was in Israel for performing. He performed the night before. A friend of mine had got us 4 tickets because they had the same manager, and we were all planning to go. The next day was at a park in Tel Aviv, and then October 7th happened.
I didn't know that. I
Yeah,
don't know why I didn't know that. I
yeah,
don't.
yeah.
That's interesting. So I guess he got out of the country
He
pretty
got out.
fast.
He got out. Yeah, he got out fast. Yep.
And so you stayed with a friend in Ramat Sharon for 6 days, and then what happened after the 6 days?
So after the 6 days, it was really hard to get a flight. So teams in Israel were flying their players to Greece because nobody knew what was going to happen. So the league was paying for teams to go to Greece for a couple of days, just wait to see what's happened.
Hmm.
And luckily, the league had a travel agent. So a friend of my teammate connected me with the travel agent. She says, "Look, I have one flight to LA left. Like, you want it?" She's like, "That's all I got. If you want to go to Rome or Greece, you might have to wait another day or two." And at this time, they were saying, they were trying to bomb the airport.
Hmm.
So, brother lives in LA, and I was like, "Hey, listen, I'll get a flight to LA. What time the flight leaves?" She says it leaves tomorrow at 11. My flight, I eventually get the flight and book the flight. It was delayed a few hours, and then successfully I was able to get back home to LA. I stayed there for about a week. Stay with my brother, and then I went back home to Philly, and then since then I just kind of used my time to inspire kids. Talk about the atrocities that happened, my experience, and give some type of light during this dark time.
Tell me about Job Camp.
So I started this initiative about 5 months ago, just off a basic idea, literally so small minded.
So
Like,
before October 7th.
yeah,
Okay.
listen, I grew up um, part of my life in a suburban, being a kid that went to private school that was a minority. being three Black kids in a predominantly white school. And then I moved to Philly after my parents got divorced, and I went to a majority Black school, majority private Black school for 3 years, life-changing experience. Then I went to a private suburban white school. And then I went to school in the Midwest, and then I went to school in Pittsburgh. So I got a very unique, diverse education and around
Wow.
different qualities and
I'd
different,
say.
walks of life.
Mhm.
So I just felt from my experience in Israel and just life in general that, I feel like an impact I could use basketball was to pretty much bring people together. And there was really no initiatives doing so, with the rise of anti-Semitism, with the rise of racism, with the rise of hate. Not why not use sports as a pillar to bring everybody together and teach them that? So I started it really originally from my middle name. My middle name is Aziel, which means in Hebrew, God has created. And my mission was that God has created all in his own image. So I just said, listen, I'm gonna do a free clinic in Philly, and then I'm gonna just go from there. So I had a free clinic on the 60th commemorative day of Washington, the March of Washington, and I had 40 kids show up, 45 kids. I paid for everything myself.
Wow.
Kids, Jewish kids, African American kids, Muslim kids, Christian kids, and it was a really successful day. And I'm like, I think this is something that can be big. I was small minded. So I just started the initiative, and, I eventually changed the name to Jab Camp, got it a 501(c)(3). And now my goal, outside of just playing basketball, kids learn, actually, I hire experts to teach them about anti-Semitism and racism. These are things kids really don't learn in school. They learn the
And
history.
when is the camp run? Is it summertime? And is it
So
only in the
yeah,
States?
So I have camp this summer. This is my first summer running actual like summer camps with Jab. I run normally just regular Jared Armstrong basketball camps, and it's going to be in June this summer in Philadelphia.
Wow.
But kids will learn about anti-Semitism and racism. Kids will learn about financial literacy, and kids will learn about nutrition. I think these are components that kids don't learn in everyday school. If you look at, the obesity rate in the United States, if you look at, kids not learning about basic fundamentals of saving, budgeting. I didn't learn it myself being an athlete. I had to learn everything
Mhm.
on my own. So I just try to give them things that they can take knowledge wise for the rest of their life. If it's one thing that they can take outside of basketball, they can say, yeah, I went to Jab Camp. It was a great experience, but I also learned about Jews, or I also learned about, history of racism, of, the collaboration or the, unity that African American and Jews had. I think it's very important that kids, understand that. And I think it's something that they can, like I said, take away for the rest of their life.
I love how you're using team mentality and sport to bridge that gap between different groups and religions. I love how you said that as a basketball player or any professional sport, you're going to throw the ball to someone who's Jewish or Christian or Muslim or Black or white. It doesn't matter. And I love that team building that's life building, really, right? Like
Yeah, I mean,
that's how we make good humans.
yeah, I think people fail to realize, when you go to a workforce, and I'm sure, from your experience being a professional at what you do, you're not going to work with white people all your life. You're not going to be in
Mm.
a workforce with all white people. You're not going to be in a workforce with all Black people. Like, you have to be able to have conversation, dialogue, understand people from different ethnic, cultural, and religious backgrounds. There's some people the way they are because of where they come from. And you may never understand that unless you have a conversation,
And
and people.
isn't it such a, it's such a blessing to have that. I only can speak about my Canadian experience. I'm not American, spent some time in the States, but as a Canadian, we pride ourselves on our multiculturalism here. We love that. We love that about Canada. And that's why it's been so heart-wrenching for me as a Jewish mother, a Jewish woman, a professional, a Canadian, to see the rise of hate speech, anti-Semitism. It's been heartbreaking. It's been so heartbreaking to watch that here. I don't know how Americans feel. I mean, I know how like the Jewish communities come together in the States and has talked about the rise of anti-Semitism, but that seems more part of that is so much fear. as well. And we have, of course, have that here as well. But it has been very heartbreaking that my children, who I take such pride in how I've raised them to be so inclusive, and that we have raised children in such a diverse country, all of a sudden are being hit with these this hate speech that they don't even know the language. It's, and you know, I've a few children in their 20s. I have a couple teenagers, and they're like, this is insanity. It's insanity.
Yeah, and
So
it's like we're going backwards, you know.
we're going backwards.
We're going backwards, and the only way we get better is if we communicate and talk to each other. You know, you can't say you hate somebody, you don't even know the reason why. How many kids you think say they hate Jews and they don't even know the reason why they hate Jews?
They have no idea. They're, like I said, I want to start giving out dictionaries, you know, as holiday presents to anybody on the street, so they can read what the definition of the words that they've been using, and in such a hateful, really such a debilitating way. It's just it's so hateful. It's so mean. And we've had a couple incidents here in the Greater Toronto area over the last few days that have been really, really, really troubling and really upsetting. And I was listening to somebody also speak, saying, like, what is it going to take? Is it going to take another violent, horrid incident to happen on this side of the world to have people wake the fuck up and see that this is this is so horrible? Like, do you feel that's coming? Do you feel like that's kind of brewing right now as well?
We're already there. You know, I just
Mm,
saw a famous Jewish woman that was saying, you know, they had a private event and nobody advertised, and they were literally Palestinian, you know, not Palestinian, but pro Hamas supporters outside banging on the door for 2 hours and almost opened the door. And like, what have happened if they would have got in? What would they have done
right.
to
Oh,
those?
you're talking about when Nama Levy's mom had come to New
No,
York?
no, this was
Oh,
in New
mm,
York. I think it's New York.
hmm,
Yeah.
hmm,
Um, I was looking at the post earlier, and it's like, what would
hmm.
have happened there? You know, like they couldn't even go to their car in peace. You know, you're talking about, you know, innocent people that didn't do anything to you. You know, and you have hate towards them for what reason? You know,
I
so
know. I
for
know
me,
when we talk
I think
about
we're
you,
already there.
well, you're 10,000 miles away from me. And uh, I feel like in some ways, as a Jewish person, you're safer there than I am here.
I am.
In some
Yeah, I
ways,
am
not, I mean, I beg to differ on many levels, of course,
for
but
sure.
in some ways you are, especially
Yeah,
as a Jewish Black man.
yeah. I mean, I tell my parents all the time. I go out at 4 in the morning. I'm safe walking down the street. Nobody bothers me. Nobody's asking me for my ID. You know, outside the war, I'm way safer here than anywhere in America, for sure. You know, I
Mhm.
never had any questions for safety measures. You know, being in Israel, and I love that. You know, I'm not a violent person. I don't believe in violence, and you know, in America, I live in one of the most dangerous cities in the world. You know, I always have to look over my shoulder. I'm not sure if you know about Philadelphia's
Mhm.
crime rate, but it's 1 or 2 in America right now. So
Isn't
you
it
know,
equal to Chicago?
yeah, I think it's
Hmm.
higher now. You
Really?
know,
Oh, really?
yeah. So for me, you know, being in Israel is second to none when it comes to that. You know, so I take advantage of it. Like I said, if I go out with friends, I was just out to 1 in the morning. You know, it was quiet. I can hear a pin drop on the street. Nobody's going to bother me. You know, if anything, taxi driver may ask you, "Can I help you get home?" You know, so it's more of a welcoming country, and you know, people all support each other and they have love for each other.
I know there is a love. It's very hard to describe this to people who have never been to Israel, and it doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not Jewish. Um, Maybe it hits home harder for people who are Jewish, but the way I've described the country is that there is a love in that country there that you can't describe the feeling unless you've been, like the love that people have for each other and for the country. And every time I've been, it's always been like that. It hasn't been like, I know there's been such divisiveness with the politics and what's been happening in Israel in the last several years, of
For
course,
sure.
but there is this feeling there that you can't really describe. And that's part of above and beyond why Jewish people around the world need a Jewish homeland. That is also one of the reasons why I believe that people want Israel to stay the way it needs to stay, exactly intact as it is, with the mentality that is there, with the abundance of love that is there. And that's why we're fighting so hard, because it is such a remarkable, special place.
For sure.
As I was saying before, it is the most inclusive place I've ever been in my life. And like you're saying, you feel safe there. It doesn't matter the color of your skin or the religion that you are. You feel very. Everybody feels at home. Like it just
For
feels
sure.
like you've come home when you go
Yeah.
there.
Outside of them blowing the horn as soon as it turns green, everything else
Right.
is good.
Right. Exactly. Right. So I want to ask, that's cute. I want to ask you something. I don't even know how to ask this, but I want to know, like, what do you identify most with? Do you identify yourself as a Black man, as a Jewish man, as like when someone asks someone, I'm asking you this because someone asked me this the other day, someone who's not Jewish said to me, what do you identify as? Like a white woman, a Jewish woman? How do you identify yourself? So I thought that's a very interesting question, because I've always said I'm a white Jewish woman. Are you a Black Jewish man? Or are you a Jewish Black man?
I think I'm just a African American man that's Jewish. That's it. You know, I don't get into the context of Black Jew. You know, I'm a person that's a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a person that, you know, like I said, I'm not spiritual, but I just, you know, I have a lot of Jewish values, and, you know, I was raised Jewish. So I just identify as a Black. You know, my skin shows that I'm Black, but if people ask me, like, yes, I am Jewish, you know.
And where do you see yourself in the next several months? You see yourself staying in Israel, continuing your work, trying to bridge the communities from
So,
Israel
so
abroad?
outside, so I play basketball here, and the season is August through May, and pretty much it's like pretty. I'm home for about 2.5, 3 months, and during my home time, I will run Jab Camp, and I also have other like my LLC, my own company that I started out of college, to train kids from all ages, to help them advance their basketball skills. So summer is a really busy time for me, but you know I think this summer would be a little different because I'll definitely probably continue to publicly speak out, you know, about what's happening in Israel, and you know, speaking to synagogues and universities maybe, and you know, other places, speaking at conferences. I've been doing it for the last, I would say, years now. You know, so I just want to try to continue to use my voice, especially as an athlete. You know, to speak out about what's going on. You know, a lot of athletes aren't speaking out, you know, and I think we have a leverage of a voice, you know, that many people are open to listening to, you know. So I'm just trying to maximize that potential, and, you know, help inspire kids also and shed a light, you know, during this dark time.
Have you thought about reaching out to other professional basketball players?
I haven't, you know, I feel, you know, especially during this war, you know, it's kind of been a mentality of people have picked a side. You know, I try not to explain, you know, what happened. It's up to you what you believe and what you believe in, you know. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, I just try to be a positive example. You know, at the end of the day, like I always tell people, on October 7th, people thought they were going to have a regular Sabbath. They didn't expect, you know,
No.
1,400 people to die. You know, if you can't see that, if you can't understand that, then you have a problem, you know, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't justify that. I shouldn't have to explain that to you, you know. So
It
I just try to,
is.
like I said, use my platform to be positive, give positive light, and really explain the situation here, because fact of the matter is, not a lot of basketball players have been here. Not a lot of players can be in my shoes. You know, I was here, close to Gaza. You know, not far at all.
So
So
close. Jared, you're
people
lucky.
don't.
You are lucky.
Yeah, for sure. So people don't
Mm-hmm.
understand that, and like I said, I just try to use my time to shed the light of what's really happening on the ground.
And I appreciate you shedding and really smashing the stereotype, because I do think that that is part of the communication that you're talking about, that people need to just smash those stereotypes, just get rid of them, because it's really part of racism, and it's part of anti-Semitism too. And I think you're doing incredible work. and I've done a lot of reading about your camp. And I urge people who have been watching this, listening to this today, to check you out online. I know people can find you on Instagram. They can just Google Jab Camp and they'll find lots of information about you as well. But how do people get in touch with you specifically if people want to reach out?
I have all contact information on my LinkedIn, on my Jab Camp website, which will be releasing at the top of the year, my jaredarmstrong.net website, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'm on pretty much all platforms that they can reach out to me, and hopefully I can help inspire them or be a light during this dark time.
I really appreciate that we had the chance to connect like this. I think you're
Well, I
really
really
incredible,
appreciate you having me.
and please be safe and just keep doing this incredible work that you're doing, and stay in
Thank you so
touch,
much.
and
Thanks so
come
much
back
for
and
having
visit us
me.
again. Come back in a
I
few
never
months. Let us
been.
know.
I never been. I wanna try to do something in Canada. So,
Oh, you
you
should
know,
set up job camps. That would be something here.
yeah. I gotta get
Mhm.
the right connections, but I will hope to. I'm trying to, it's a nationwide mission. I think every city needs it. The anti-Semitism, racism, and hate is only getting worse in America. I'm not sure how Canada is, but I know in America it's terrible.
It's pretty bad. Yeah. But we'll try
Yeah.
to stay positive. We will
All right,
try.
sounds good. Well, you're on Instagram, correct?
I am. I sure am.
My Instagram has been crazy because I made a post for like the last 2 days and I can't
I
even check
saw,
it.
wait, before I let you go, Jared, I want to talk about this post that you made because it was a little controversial. But it had to be said. It just did because everybody's thinking it. And why don't you tell everybody what you said in this post?
I basically just said like, there's 18 to 24-year-olds that are saying that Israel should end and be handed over to Hamas. And, you know, number one is propaganda. Number two, why would you hand over a country to a terrorist organization? And number three, like, you must think it's a game. So you think it's a game, let's trade places. Let the Gen Zers come to Israel, let Israelis come to America, and let's open up the borders and let's see what Hamas terrorists do to you. If you think it's a game, let's show you that it's real.
Mhm.
So
I like when
I
you
think
said
it's
that.
important.
We'll all move to America, and all you Gen Zers who believe in everything and all the propaganda that you're reading on TikTok and have become pro Hamas, a terrorist group, you come move here and let's see what they do to you.
Yeah, I mean,
Because the truth is, we know this. They've said this. We're going to kill every Jew in the world.
that's the
October
first
7th is
stage,
gonna, that's the first. October
and then
7th
they
is gonna
said,
happen
"Look,"
over and over again. And then
and
we're
then they
coming
said,
for all of you.
"In America."
That's right. They're coming for
Exactly.
all of you who have been, all you Gen Zers who are marching on university campuses, who are going to rallies in the main streets of every major city, and chanting. I'm not even going to say the chant because it makes me throw
Yeah.
up. I will not say it. They're coming for you. So I understand why this was a very controversial post that you
For
put up,
sure.
but someone had to say it. I didn't have the guts to say it. You did. So kudos to you.
All right. Well,
Kudos
if
to
you want
you.
to do
Well,
any,
you're closer to that age than I am, so you have
yeah,
a little bit more,
for sure. Well, if you want to do any type of collaboratory post, let me know. I'd love to do it.
for sure.
Share your
We'll tag
page.
you on everything.
All right,
Absolutely.
sounds good. All right, well,
Stick
we'll
around,
talk to
Jared.
you
Stick around
soon.
for a second. I'm going to say goodbye to
Okay,
everybody.
okay.
Thanks everybody for listening. We really appreciate you spending this last hour with us and listening to Jared, who's been wonderful. So I'll catch you next time on the DL.